What up, YouTube? Flash Speaks back for another video in the aftermath of Joel Embiid's historic 70.18 rebound performance against the rookie sensation Victor Wembanyana. We're going to start talking about some Sixers basketball. Listen, Joel Embiid, phenomenal. Went out there and I don't know if he was sending a message to the young man or what. I think it was a combination of that, as well as Brett Brown being in the building, wanting to show him that, I'm the premier big man in the league. I guess it's one of those things, coupled with he just found himself being hot. I mean, I think he almost had 30 points in the first quarter. He had over 20 in the first quarter. 34 at the half, so I think he felt like, hey, man, F it, why not? Let's go for something that doesn't happen a lot, something I never did. And then you also have Wilt Norman Chamberlain's record of 68 points for the Philadelphia 76ers in reach. So, hey, why not go ahead and bring one of the records of one of the GOATs of the game, one of the 4 best players to ever play the game. And this is what this brings me to. Listen, there's plenty of content on the internet when it comes to basketball. You got this Player's Choice thing. You got my man Ticket TV. You got Rated R Sports. These guys love to discuss basketball. Now, the reason I don't call into these things, even though I listen because I love sports, but I don't call in a lot and debate these guys oftentimes, is because of the disrespect that is put forth towards men like Wilt Chamberlain, men like Bill Russell, and others, and guys who played in that era. You hear people say things like, it's the Jim Crow era. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's the Jim Crow era. Or, there were only 8 teams in the league. Or, Wilt Chamberlain ain't play against nobody. Or, other stuff, clown stuff like that. And what I'm going to do today is debunk all that and make it clear to you that Wilt Norman Chamberlain, the basketball player, would absolutely dominate anywhere, anytime, any court. All right. Wilt Norman Chamberlain, we share one thing in common. Both born in the city of Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. Wilt Norman Chamberlain used to play on the streets of Philadelphia. All right, he went to Overbrook High School where he dominated. All right, and let me explain. You see, in basketball, as with any sport, but in basketball in particular, there are 3 characteristics that can render a basketball player dominant or great. Just kind of like my little synopsis of it all. The first one is athleticism. If a basketball player has the attribute of athleticism, this is something that can lead to them being successful and dominant. The second one is just basketball skill set. I'm talking about the ability to shoot, whether it's the ability to dribble, whether it's the footwork that helps one to, perform in the post, blah, 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 all those different things. Now, athleticism is connected to some of those things, but not necessarily, okay? Like, for example, you would say that Nikola Jokic has great basketball skills, but not necessarily the greatest athleticism. You would say James Harden has great basketball skills, but not necessarily athleticism. You would say that Steph Curry has immense basketball skills, but not necessarily the athleticism. Got me? Then the third one is IQ. You're an IQ player. Example, Magic Johnson, you would say, doesn't have the greatest athleticism in the world, though he has good size, okay, but not the greatest athleticism in the world. Magic Johnson, even when it comes to skill set, one wouldn't say, okay, that he has the fancy footwork in the post of a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or even a Jamal Mashburn. to use a guy that people don't often name. But when it comes to IQ, Magic Johnson, in my opinion, is the smartest basketball player to ever play on the hardwood. Period. Never seen one smarter, never seen a better floor general. Right? Never seen a guy that controls the game like Magic Johnson ever. Right? That's what puts him on the Mount Rushmore. But Wilton, Norman, Chamberlain, listen, understand me. Some players are the best athlete in the league. We're going to talk right now, just we're going to bring this full circle. But some players are the best athlete in the league. Like, for example, Giannis Antetokounmpo, for example. He's just the best, flat-out best athlete, in my opinion, in the league. You know, one can make an argument for, say, a Zion Williamson, a few other guys, Zach LaVine, whatever. But for me, for my money, the best athlete in basketball is Giannis Antetokounmpo. When we talk about the best player in the league, though, sometimes people look at different things. Some people will argue, no, a Kevin Durant is better than Giannis. And typically their argument will be centered around, well, Kevin Durant, you know, can shoot better. He got to stop and pop. He got the bag, 3-level scorer. These types of arguments people will give. Then someone else might say, no, the best player is Jokic. Why? Because look at what Jokic can do. Some people say LeBron James, etc., and so forth. All right? Sometimes, though, especially those who argue for Giannis, really it's just the pure athleticism and the dominance that athleticism allows one to dominate with. Some people, and I would say that none of these people are wrong. They all have valid opinions. But the point that's missed a lot of times is sometimes being the best athlete is just enough to be the best player, right? If you look at those finals that Giannis played in, I believe it was the 2021 finals, Giannis was just the best athlete, period. Right? No one's going to tell you that he's more skilled than a Devin Booker, right? No one's going to tell you that he's more skilled than a Chris Paul. But what he was able to do, I saw in that game 6 of his, where you saw Devin Booker coming up to drive to score and Giannis coming out of nowhere, swatting it. For the rest of the game, Devin Booker was scared. Why? Because the best athlete ruled the day there. All right. My people, there has never, ever, ever in the NBA been a more impressive and a better physical specimen, just flat out athlete than Wilt Norman Chamberlain, who goes by many names, the Big Dipper. Right? Wilt the Stilt, I call him the Blueprint. Right? That's my name that I got for him. You're talking about a man who stood at 7 foot 1 inches tall. Okay? 7 feet 1 inches tall. That's number one. His playing weight when he first comes into the NBA is 250. Once he starts reaching a little bit more of his prime, you know, we're talking about like good 3-4 years, he starts playing at 276. As we get a little bit further more, and still in his prime, his playing weight is 300 pounds. So we're talking about 7 foot 1, 300 pounds. A wingspan when he was at Kansas. And when he was at Kansas, you can look this up. His wingspan measured at 8 feet 4 inches. He puts his hands out like this. Wilt Chamberlain does this. That measured at 8 feet 4 inches. Now, just to compare, Victor Wembanyana's wingspan is 8 feet. And anyone who watched that game last night against Embiid, you saw his wingspan is significant. That time when Embiid was behind him, and Wemby did this little move, scoop under, which I think pissed Embiid off. You saw that. You saw the wingspan. He was able to win the opening tip. The wingspan, 8 feet. Wilt Chamberlain's wingspan was 4 inches longer than his. Just think about that. Wilt Chamberlain could run the 100-meter dash, and these are recorded things, right? We're talking about in under 10 seconds, right? So we're talking about almost Olympic level speed, okay? To get up and down the floor. And if you see early footage of Wilt Chamberlain, when he's running, it's like faster than everybody because the strides that he can make at how tall he was. When Wilt Chamberlain stands, it's something called a standing reach, which is your real basketball height, especially when you're talking about defense. His standing reach, when he stands up and puts his arms up like this, 9 feet, 6 inches. My people, the court is only 10 feet tall. So you're talking about 9 feet, 6 inches. He's 6 inches away from the damn rim when he puts his hand up. Let me explain to you. You take a guy with these physical attributes, physical traits, and you put him on a basketball court. Listen to me. I don't care if it is in the year 2023, 2001, 96, 84, 74. I don't care if it was when the man James Naismith invented basketball and you put him right there with him during that year. That physical specimen is going to be a dominant presence in that game regardless. If the game is in the United States, in Philadelphia, at Madison Square Garden, at the Great Western Forum in LA, at the damn Staples Center, at in Serbia, and whatever place they play at, it doesn't matter. You put this physical specimen on that court, he will be the most imposing physical specimen on the court. Doesn't matter where he is. This is what you got to understand about Wilt Chamberlain. And this is why I scoff at people who say, well, he only played against, so-called Stephen A. Smith. He only played against white guys that were 5'7" and, these types of things. First of all, it's a lie. It's a lie. He should be ashamed of himself. Secondly, Wilt Chamberlain will be the biggest, baddest dude now. Anytime. There's nobody that's going to be his size now. In all aspects. No. His hand's bigger than Wilt Chamberlain's. I saw Wilt Chamberlain stand next to Patrick Ewing. That's a legit 7-footer. Shake Patrick Ewing's hand. His hand covered Patrick Ewing's hand like he's a little boy. You understand? I saw a picture of Wilt Chamberlain standing next to Shaq. Wilt was in his 50s at the time. Maybe 60s. I don't know. He was old. He was bigger than Shaquille O'Neal. Talking about prime Shaquille O'Neal. Okay? This individual, just from a physical dominant standpoint, is going to dominate. Okay? Now the question is, will he score 50 points a game? Will he score 100 points in a game? I say maybe, maybe not. I say what does it matter? If you look at Wilt Chamberlain's career averages of 30 points a game, damn near 23 rebounds, 22.9 rebounds a game. Okay? The 30 points, I don't see him not scoring 30 points. I just don't. The 22 rebounds, we can question. Maybe, maybe not. Could he do 15 rebounds a night? Sure. I don't see why not. Okay? And he did this 30% on 54% shooting. Okay? Now, if you think he's just standing in the lane and doing all, no. Wilt Chamberlain had a nice little fadeaway jump shot that he would go to. Right? You're talking about a 7-time scoring champ, 2-time champion, 4-time MVP, MVP Finals MVP, 11-time rebound champ, 10-time All-NBA, Rookie of the Year, 13-time All-Star, 2-time All-Defensive Player in Wilt Norman Chamberlain. Okay? And to refute some of the nonsense, we got to look at some of the centers he played against. Number one, Wilt Bill Russell stands at 6'9", 6'10". You know, some people might say that's not impressive, but so what? Dwight Howard was about 6'9", 6'10". Bam Adebayo was 6'8". And Bam Adebayo is considered a good center in this age, okay? A lot of you want to say that, oh, these players are much more athletic now. They're much more this, they're much more that. Bam Adebayo is considered a legit center in this age, and he is 6'8" tall. Explain that. Walt Bellamy stood at 6'11", 250, and gave you 20 and 13 points a night, was a Hall of Famer. This is a guy, one of the guys that Wilt Chamberlain went up against. Nate Thurman, who stood at 6'11", who gave you 15 and 15 a night. Hall of Famer. These are career numbers. There's years where he scored 20 and so on, but these are career numbers. All right? This is people he went up against. Wes Unseld stands at 6'7", right? You might say that's small. Bam is 6'8", like you just said. Clint Capella. Like, sometimes Draymond Green is put in at the 5. Right? It happens. Some guys play bigger than they are. Charles Barkley played 6'4", played in an era of big power forwards like Sean Kemp, who was 6'10", and Chris Webber was 6'10", and Rasheed Wallace, and guys like that he played against. And Bill Laimbeers, tall power forwards. But Charles Barkley was 6'4", and he's better than all of them. All right? So don't get all caught up in size. Charles Barkley is another athletic marvel. This is to show that athleticism always is an asset and trumps many of those other things you guys think you're looking at. Dave Collins is another, 6'9". Willis Reed, 6'10". These were Hall of Fame players that Wilt Chamberlain went against. I ain't even mentioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the greatest he went against. And we're talking about towards the tail end of his career, he went up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who stood at 7'3", and many argue exceeded Wilt in career. Not here to argue about that. Kareem is another one. He's great. But this idea that Wilt Chamberlain somehow wouldn't be skilled enough, wouldn't be good enough. Do you consider Giannis to be an extremely skilled player? Or does Giannis do a lot of just using his athleticism, using his power, bullying into people, using his long arms to dunk over people? Wilt Chamberlain, my people, is Giannis on steroids. If you could just imagine, because Wilt could handle the ball better than you think. Just imagine this guy. I told you his wingspan, and did I mention that he was seen bench pressing 600 pounds before? You know who saw him do it? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger tells a story of Wilt Chamberlain. He saw Wilt Chamberlain bench press 600 pounds. So you got a 7'1", 300-pound guy bench pressing who could bench press 600 pounds. And by the way, this was in the 80s. Okay? Wilt, he talking about after he retired, he was seen benching 600 pounds. So just imagine in his prime in the league how much he's benching. So just imagine a 7'1" guy with speed. Oh, and did I mention he had a 46 or 48-inch vertical jump? And we know he did because he used to do the high jump in college. So it ain't just some stuff people making up. No, he actually was a high jump champion and a long jump champion. We're talking about a supreme athlete. There's never been an athlete like this. You put that athlete anywhere at any time, that athlete's going to dominate. He just is. Even if he's just going to get all the blocks and the rebounds. Okay? Just imagine that guy in this league playing like Giannis. Driving, bowling over people, dunking on everybody. Like, there's no way Wilt Chamberlain wouldn't score 30 if Giannis is scoring 30. It's impossible. Okay? Now, some of you, you like to do, you like to look at old footage of guys playing in the 60s and the 50s, and you look at the way they play, and, you see dribbling with one hand. You don't see a lot of between the legs, fancy dancy stuff and all of that. I mean, most of y'all probably ain't never watched Bob Cousy, okay, because Cousy does that stuff, and so did Pistol Pete Maravich, but that's beside the point. So did Earl the Pearl, but that's beside the point. A lot of y'all just think, you know, you can only judge based off of what you've watched and you can't go and do research, but, you know, I don't agree with that. Understand the way the game looks and why it looks that way. Okay? The way Wilt Chamberlain's game looked in the 50s and 60s looked that way because of the era he was in. When Wilt Norman Chamberlain is coming up in the 40s, because he was born in 1933, when he's coming up in the 40s and in the 50s with aspirations of playing basketball in college at Kansas and then in the NBA, Wilt Chamberlain is watching guys like George Mikan play. So naturally, he's imitating, you know, Mikan, guys like that. You know, how like if a young player right now is out there, he's imitating Steph Curry. So he's doing that stuff. So he works on that. Wilt growing up at a time where he's imitating Mikan. He's imitating Bob Pettit. These types of guys. So his game is going to look sort of like that. Okay? He, however, of course, added on to what they did. He added the nice little jumper that he had. He had a nice little finger roll that he had. Different things like that. And Wilt Chamberlain, of course, becomes the blueprint for all centers after him and forever, honestly. Because you're always going to want a guy that's 7 foot, that is athletic as hell, that can do what he does, right? This is why those guys go first. This is why Greg Oden went before Kevin Durant, though it was a mistake. But people see a 7-footer that looks like he could be special, they go for that. Joel Embiid would have went #1 over Andrew Wiggins had it not been for an injury. Okay, those guys are what the NBA was always looking for. They're the blueprint. If you could start a league, start a team, and you got a 7-footer that's skilled versus a wing player that's skilled, people are going to take the 7-footer 9 times out of 10. That's just the way it is, because there's more examples of that succeeding in the history of the NBA than it is banking on a wing player. Though sometimes the wing player, like a Michael Jordan, proves people wrong, but that's still not the safest bet. Because if nothing else, you got an athletic big man, he's going to get you. He's going to dominate the paint for you. And that's one part of the game you ain't got to worry about when you got that guy. Wilt Chamberlain, because of the time he played and because of the guys he imitated and he had the top, all right, his goal, all right, I'm going to be better than Mikan. I'm going to be better than Pettit, better than those guys. So you got, after him, you got the Kareems, who watches Wilt. So when he comes in, of course, his game will look a little bit more skillful. Why? Because he's starting out with Wilt's game and adding on his little spice to it. Later on, this ushers in what? The centers of the 80s and the 90s. The greatest, probably, era of centers. Though there were some great ones back then, you know, the Wes Unsells and Nate Thurmans. None of them guys, even Bill Russell, these guys weren't chopped liver. But if we want to talk about the greatest era centers, in my opinion, you're talking about the late 80s, 90s. David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal later. You can even add Alonzo Mourning, man. I know I'm forgetting somebody. Dikembe Mutombo. You know, then later ushered in Tim Duncan, who technically is a power forward, but he's really a center. Like, really. I mean, you talk about his game for real, where he was and how he scored, right? So you get my point. But those guys were who they were because of who they watched. Some of them guys who were young enough were watching Kareem, adding on. What I'm saying is, Wilt Chamberlain, as a physical specimen and a physical athlete, if you dumped him in the 90s, his game is going to reflect that time, because then he would have watched Kareem, who had watched such and such, right? If Joel Embiid is the prime example of this. Joel Embiid was a kid growing up in Cameroon who just didn't know English, was a soccer player. And soccer definitely helped his footwork. That's one of the secrets of why he's good as he is. Joel Embiid first is introduced to basketball through tapes of Hakeem Olajuwon and then later Kobe Bryant. You know, he watched some of the finals that Kobe played in, but Hakeem Olajuwon, he says, was his favorite. So when he's watching these tapes, he used to imitate Hakeem, you see. And through imitating Hakeem Olajuwon, that's why his game looked the way it looked. If Joel Embiid had just tapes of Wilt Chamberlain, for example, his moves and all of that, that's the way his game would look, right? These guys are, and the game looks the way it looks because guys watch those before them and then they add on to it. This is the thing people got to understand. You can't look back then, oh my God, the game was slow. These guys didn't have skills. They just did this. No. Those guys are the reason the guys you like are what they are now because they watched those guys. If you take Wilt Chamberlain, the physical specimen that he is, and you plop him into 2020, 2023, his game will look more like Jokic and Embiid's game. Okay? And he would still dominate because just by sheer virtue of his size and his nimbleness and athleticism, you're not stopping him from getting 30. Did you see how Joel Embiid just got 70 last night? Wilt Chamberlain, being the guy who's responsible for all these rule changes for the widening of the lane, he's the guy that made it where you have to shoot free throws from the free throw line. Wilt Chamberlain used to just take and just jump from behind the free throw line and dunk the damn ball. Because of that, they had to change the rules. 3-second violation. All these different things. They had to change because of Wilt Norman Chamberlain. All right? Now people got to recognize that, man. So when someone comes to you and says he's the GOAT, there's different reasons for that. Right? The rule changes, the stats, all these different things. You know, the rule book, the record books. You know, I don't argue with people when they say they believe Wilt is the GOAT. I don't argue with that. You know, hey, I get it. You know, I have a little bit different way to judge things. But I get it. I get the argument. I don't have a problem with say Russell. People say Russell is the GOAT. You know the reason? Because he's the only thing that was in the way of Wilt Chamberlain. If you look at the Wilt Chamberlain being the beast that he was, and the only guy that was in his way that stopped him from scoring, I don't know, winning 15 damn rings was Bill Russell. Just for that, you got to give Bill Russell credit. I'll do another video on Bill Russell, Mr. Russell, another time. But, and just to strengthen what I'm saying here, because it was one day I'm going to do another video on Dr. J, Doc. Because another thing that pissed me off was when Doc was asked his top 5, you know, he didn't mention LeBron James or Michael Jordan and stuff like that. People actually had an attitude with that. Negro, don't you know that that's Dr. J? Dr. J is not going to sit up there and meat ride Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe and all these type of guys you want. He's Dr. J. He's Julius Erving. There was a time the league was his. Like, a lot of y'all don't know that, though. The league was his. When I was a young boy growing up, Dr. J was everything in the house, man. Like, I used to come down, man, we used to watch Prism. Dr. J is on. Hey, he was the guy. So he's not going to do that. Like, just because y'all want him to. Anyway, man, I said what I need to say, man. Respect your elders, man. Respect the guys, man, that made this game what it is, man. Wilt Chamberlain, it's no way. There's no way he's not scoring 30, which is his career average. In this league, when you got a guy like Giannis that can score 30. Stop it. Peace.